So, I've been thinking about preservation, meaning mostly vehicle preservation, and in the UK, because I don't know much else about preservation outside of the UK. I know there's plenty of people in the States interested in it. There's quite a few of us here in the UK. But I'm a bit concerned about its future. So it's getting expensive. It's really expensive to buy something. It's really expensive to buy the parts. It's really expensive to keep it running, keep it maintained, keep it stored. I was looking the other day on eBay, some Mark II Escorts. Mark II Escorts. They all seem to be left-hand drive imported. None of them are registered, so they need registering. They need a load of work doing to them. They all say they need welding. Most of them are 1300s. Excuse me. Most of them in pretty tatty condition. So, I mean, the bodywork's probably better than a UK car if you could find one for anything even close to reasonable money in the UK these days. But the interior's all sun damaged, a lot of them. So I think they've come possibly from South Africa or somewhere quite hot. The interior's all need doing, and that's not cheap. And these things are like £4,000 plus. So by the time you've paid that and then done what you've got to do to register them and sort out the import side of things, and it ain't cheap. And then if I'm find in the UK, you can't get them cheap anymore. I remember a few years ago, a mate of mine got knocked on the door and got given a DAX kit car that had never been finished with a 2 litre Pinto in it. Yeah, if you knocked on that door now, they'd probably want £3,000 for it. It's gone mad. I used to buy cars at £300 with MOT and tax on them. Back when you could get tax on a car still when you bought it. I mean, I bought a 2.8 Mark III Capri. It was a 2.8 special, petrol blue over silver. Had the half leather in it, the limited slip diff, and it had been messed with it a little bit. Peter Lloyd Rallying exhaust and manifolds on it. God, it was loud. So loud. I paid £350 with 6 months tax and MOT. Bought it in the dark in a rainstorm, down the back road in Trowbridge with no street lights. I ran it for 6 months. I drove it like I stole it. I ran it for 6 months. Somebody ploughed in the back of me. Wrote off there. I think it was I can't remember if it was a Citroen Berlingo or a Renault Kangol or something like that. They basically stove the entire front of their car, this van in. I'd stopped in traffic. The sun was in my eyes. The sun was in his eyes. His windscreen was nearly as dirty as mine, and he just didn't see me. He said he didn't hit the brake pedal until he heard the bang, is what he reckoned. And it just bent the mounts that held the bumper, and it had a metal bumper and it flattened the bumper. So that would have been like £50 to fix. I didn't bother because I'd only paid £350 for the car. It wasn't worth anything, was it? Am I going to spend money on a car like that? And just before the MOT ran out, the head gasket went. I've been nosy. There's a Class 66 trundling past on the railway line just here. Head gasket went. And could have done the head gasket. It's 2.8 cologne. They're not hard to do. The reason the head gasket went was a Jubilee clip rusted through on the bottom hose and it blew the bottom hose off. And I didn't realise while I was driving, and it overheated and blew the head gasket. And I could have done it. I should have done it. But at the time, I had a Sierra with a 2.9 in it, a 4x4 one, that we put a twin turbo kit from a Granada Turbo Technics car on it. And I had something else as well. I think I had 4 cars at the time. I can't remember what it was now anyway. And so I parked the Capri up, didn't worry about it. I decided I had to get rid of a couple of them, so I stuck the Capri and traded it for £300. No tax, no MOT, blown head gasket, £300. Bloke comes out, looks at it, goes, oh, runs nicely. He said, the head gasket. He said, oh, yeah, head gasket's on, but it runs all right. Sounds nice. You sure you don't want more for it? It's a special. It's got a limited slip diff in it. I said, that's all right. It's 300 quid. I was laughing. I'd had 6 months free driving for driving in this car for 50 quid. And now, do you know what? That same car in the same condition, probably be like 4 or 5 grand. It's like, oh, I should have. That's one of the many cars I should have kept. But I'll never have another one because they're too much money. So says the person with the project I've got at the moment, which probably cost me more than every project I've had in the past, just to buy the damn thing. And it'll probably never get done because I'll never be able to afford to do it. But this is the whole point. It's like I need to get a load of stuff for it. I need a load of steel. I need electrical stuff that hasn't run in 3 years. We're going to try and get it running a couple of weeks' time. But that's not going to be on this channel. If you want to see that, you want to see the other channel, see what it is. It's got its own channel, which is Project Marlin, and anything to do with the truck will go on there. But anyway, me worrying about preservation. The money thing is the biggest worry for me, because it all revolves around that. It's all about, can you afford to buy it? Can you afford to keep it? Can you afford to maintain it? Can you afford to restore it? Can you afford to run it? So can you afford? That's where it comes down to. If you haven't got the skills to restore something, if you've got the money, you can pay somebody to do it. It's not cheap, but you can pay somebody to do it. I'll have to ask my mate. He got a Diablo restored for somebody about 6 months ago. It'd be interesting to know just how much money that was. And I was chatting to a guy who restores classic cars. He's just ordered 2 fuel filler caps for a, can't remember if it's a DB3 or DB4 Aston Martin, and the filler caps are £3,500 each, which is like, I can't even comprehend how you would afford to justify, or how you could justify £6,000 for a pair of fuel filler caps. I mean, at least on my thing, things are expensive, but I mean, 6 grand's half of the tyres for the truck. So anyway, but the problem is it's becoming harder and harder, I think, for people to get stuff that they could restore on their own and be able to afford to do it. You could go out and buy something a lot more modern than a Mark III Escort for £1,000, maybe less. But the bits are harder to get in a way because it's all electronic. Everything's electronic. Electronics are harder to look after when they do go wrong. If you get an ECU fail, you've got to find someone who can repair that ECU, and if it needs a memory chip changing, you've got to find someone who can program it. And that's going to become harder and harder and harder as we get more and more reliant on stuff like that. I mean, I'm sat here in a transit van right now. It's a 2019 one. It's quite nice. It's got a nice infotainment system here and touch screen and all this, that and the other. But I will be absolutely amazed in 30 years if there's one of these sat at a vintage rally. I'm just parked behind a Series 3 Land Rover that belongs to the farm. They did it up on a new galvanised chassis a few years back. I know he's got clutch trouble with it in a minute. But that's on an L reg, so what's that, an L? I've got to try and think. 92, 93, 94. So L would be 94-ish. That's the old L. So about 1974. That 30 years time might have had another rebuild before then, but that could easily be a vintage rally. This van won't be, because no one will be able to get the bits to fix the damn thing. So that's a bit of a worry. Like, new stuff coming in for preservation, I think it's going to be really hard. Like once we start seeing a lot of stuff that's sort of mid-90s, I would have said. Mid-90s, mid to late 90s. You do see a bit of stuff at the rallies now, but as they start getting older and they start getting electrical problems, I think they're going to disappear off the scene. Although that said, when I was a kid, we saw loads of standard Fords and tractors, like standard ends, and you hardly see any now. So there must be hundreds of the damn things parked somewhere that have been restored at some point and then forgotten about. And that's the other thing. There's like, I keep seeing stuff. People keep putting pictures up on Facebook of stuff that used to be on the preservation circuit and rally circuit and that, and they got sold to somebody, and they've just rotted away. They've been left to rot. I mean, even museums have been doing it. There was a museum over Kent Way. They had, can't remember if it was a Thames or if it was an Austin K4, something like an Austin K4. They had a really nice one. It'd been on the preservation scene for a few years. They bought it, they left it outside, and it got to the cut condition where, because they did nothing with it, it drove in there and it basically got swept up off the floor into the back of a scrapman's lorry because they didn't look after it. So we're losing stuff at a rate that we shouldn't be losing things. I saw a video on YouTube the other day. There's a little steam tank engine at a closed place down, I think it's Devon or Cornwall. It's just sat rusting in the car park. I mean, it's been stripped of most of its brass and that, but there's enough there that you could potentially get it steaming. It did steamed up into the 70s, but it's not steamed since then. But it's potentially something that could be saved. But it won't be. It'll be left to rot. The owner doesn't want to sell it. They're just happy to watch it rot away, and I'm sort of guilty of that with my truck. I don't want to sell it. It's not worth what I paid for it. It wasn't worth what I paid for it when I bought it. Now it's in worse condition because I started stripping it down, and it's to a point where it's shit or bust. And I don't want to sell it. I want to do it, but I can't do it because I don't have the money. And that's not going to get better. Not anytime soon, unless I win the lottery or I decide to go and get a real job instead of working for myself, which is a whole another thing. That's going to be, I think that's probably another video, working for yourself. But yeah, I mean, these groups are raising money. I mean, they're building a brand new steam engine at the moment. That's great. Some of the preservation groups are raising money and preserving some interesting locos. There's a preservation railway started up a few years ago, but they don't have any running track, and they're in the process of doing all that not far from here, down at Berkeley, on the 7 Vale of Berkeley Railway. If you're interested in that sort of thing and you're in the area, get down there and volunteer. I think they need as much help as they can get. So there's groups doing stuff, and I think it's going to end up where, even to do smaller projects, it's going to have to start becoming groups of people. But anyway, I could carry on like this for the rest of the day. You probably haven't listened this far, and I wouldn't have probably if I'd started watching it. Oh God, it's a miserable bugger in the van talking rubbish. But yeah, if you fancy subscribing for my weird and wonderful rants that I'm throwing on here, to try and get them out of my head, it could be about anything really. Yeah, subscribe if you like the video. If you've got any of your own opinions on what I've been talking about, stick it down in the comments, and yeah, maybe we'll see you for the next video. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.